Started a long time ago, just before my 4th birthday. I caught a fish. So it must be I was a native fish hobbyist before my 4th birthday in my grandfather's farm in Illinois. Then that got me started chasing fish, and I chased them all the way through junior high school out in the state of Washington, steelhead and salmon and that good stuff. And then we moved to Houston. And in Houston, if you didn't have a boat, motor, and trailer, or know somebody that did, there was very little fishing done. So that was when there was a vacant space. Well, I was downtown in Houston, and I stopped into a little mall, and there was a pet shop there. And I was curious what kind of fish they had, because they were advertising fish. So I went in and did some looking around. I talked to the people there. They recognized a potential interest there, so they invited me to a meeting of the newly formed Houston Aquarium Society. I went to that, had a good time, seemed pretty interesting, so they were only a couple of years old then, but I got started and been keeping fish ever since. That first meeting, members there had sort of a program to get people started with fish if they didn't have any to begin with. So a couple of them made contact with me and said, as soon as you get your tank set up, let us know. And one of them had a couple of young angels for me. Another one had a pair of zebra danios. And then the ubiquitous guppies were also included from another person. There are 2 or 3 I started with there. One of them was a convict cichlid, which people have heard about quite regularly now. And zebra danios, guppies, of course. If you add water, they'll breed. The fish that really got me hooked into it solid was a fish we call white clouds. At that time, there was a singer named Johnny Ray that was singing about the little white cloud that cried.
The little white cloud that cried.
It was a fairly scarce fish then because they had just been brought in. And I hit some good methods of spawning them. I learned from a mentor, so to speak, D.B. Cosby from Florida, who brought back the method they used of a bowl of plants. That worked so well that that financed my fish hobby for the next couple of years. You can get just as deeply involved in it as you like, or you can just have 1 2 or 3 gallon tank in the corner of a desk or in a cove in a hall or anything else. Or you can get to, like some people have done, they've got tanks in the basement that are almost as big as an entire room. Any degree of complexity or devotion you want to put into it, you can get into it. And not only are the fish many different kinds, many different flavors, sizes, colors, habits, air breathers, so on. Live bearers, people think of live bearers as a small fish. The great white shark is a live-bearing fish. You can have about any variety you want. The people are different. If you want planted tanks, you can be as artistic with the plants as you want, or you can keep it pretty plain and simple. Different fish need different breeding conditions, and there's a world of challenges out there. There have been a world of changes. Used to be tanks were made out of metal frames, cast bronze, cast brass, and the glass was cemented in with a putty-like material. Then they went to welded angle iron, and you still use that method of putting the glass in. Later on, they started gluing together the tanks using silicone adhesives. Other things have changed. Way back when, there was a long life conditioning food. It was the #1 food that almost everybody that kept fish used. It was all dried insects and insect life. Now, it's all made in flakes, different sizes, pellets, very small crumbles, hardly the size of sawdust, on up to some 1/4 inch in diameter. That has been a big change. Where you used to have maybe 8 or 10 fish that would be referred to as killifish, that you'd even see pictures of. Say nothing of actually seeing them in a store. Now you've got literally hundreds. Live bears, you had 10 or maybe 15. Now you've got 100 species of swordtails, 100 species of varieties and color sports of mollies, swords, wags, so many different kinds. My favorite species was actually the entire genus of killifish. Those have very interesting reproductive habits. The eggs have to be incubated usually. They're a surface feeder. They hover near the surface, which means you've got to keep the tank closed pretty tight. You don't leave them open or you'll find them on the floor the next morning. But that's how they developed, because their primary food is water insects, like mosquitoes. And they can pick them off the surface when the mosquito isn't even touching the water. They'll make that little jump in the front room. If there's no lid on the tank, they're out on the floor, and that's the end of them. But killifish, and there's so many different types, different breeding habits. They come from practically every continent in the world and are very, very different. Some of them they find in nature, a pair of them spawning in an elephant track with water in it, and they'll be spawning. Then the marshy area may dry out or get almost dry. Rains again 6 months later. In 4 weeks, the eggs have hatched and the young have grown to adult size and have started breeding. Way of nature adapting to unusual weather conditions and unusual living quarters. One research man did an experiment where he kept eggs for as long as almost 20 years, and they still were ready to hatch. So life can be quite persistent, and it's interesting to see. Find a ma and pa type pet shop if you can. Find out if there's a local club or association or fish group, because they can be a great source. The people there will range, most of them, from brand new, just getting started, to very serious, very trained and expert people. You can learn from all of them. Remember, don't feel embarrassed if you don't know a lot about fish yet, because the people that know now, when they started, they didn't know much about them either. But people helped them. They taught them, they trained them, they showed them things, provided a diversity in their thinking, and made them acquainted with many fish that they might not have seen or even thought about before. Sometimes they'll have fish collecting expeditions, whether it's a shop hop in another town to see what's over there, or whether it's just a meeting out in somebody's backyard with a collecting in a little stream or pond nearby. There's a lot. There's many different clubs around. I've written magazine articles for some. I've written paid articles, for the professionals. You've got clubs like the American Killifish Association that stresses at one type of fish. Or later this year in April, end of April, we've got an American Live Bearer Association meeting right here in Grand Rapids out at the Crown Plaza. This is a group of people that like live bearers of all types and sizes and colors. Some of them are quite complicated, some of them are just something pretty to look at. Many of them are quite interesting in their habits, in their terrains where they come from. The Grand Valley Aquarium Club is the host for the one that the American Live Bearer Association. They'll have hundreds of people in and hundreds, if not thousands, of displays of fish. You can see those unusual ones you've heard about. The American Killifish has about 3,000 members. That's a worldwide organization. They just had their 50th anniversary. They're one of the longest existing clubs, at least in this country and possibly in the world, that have been steady the whole time. You got a great diversity in the club. You've got 50, 60 people there. You've got some that are quite skilled. You've got some that are brand new, just joined. They're all willing to learn. And the beautiful part, The people that have the skills, that have learned the experiences, that have developed the new things, they're glad to share. They don't try to keep secrets. They'll help the youngster. They'll help the new person just getting in after retirement, or a kid in high school. Outreach to through teachers to classrooms, to put an aquarium in a school classroom where you have 30 kids every hour and they're looking at the fish. Maybe they have to kind of look away once in a while to do their lessons, but it's something of interest to them, and better that than just texting. Legacy means something that's passed on. I like it for that reason. Many people have helped me over many years, because when I started out, I walked into that pet shop, I didn't know anything about fish except the ones I caught with a rod and reel. People there helped me. They got me started. I was the first president of the Junior Aquarium Society there. Later on, I got to be one of the charter members that formed the American Killifish Association. That's the group that's got thousands of members now worldwide, 50 years old. I was a little younger then too. But those things that I've learned, it's up to me as a legacy to pass them on to the next generation coming up. That way they can get a running start, so to speak, and then the whole field is wide open for them to continue where I leave off and develop more new things, which they can then pass along to new members in the club. And everybody can benefit, learn new things, and have new thrills, new experiences, both in terms of breeding fish, beautiful ways to do aquariums, just an interesting hobby that can be very diverse as far as the fish, the people, the extent, and the enjoyment. But usually the enjoyment is pretty solid all the way through.